I am very happy to see you all here today. I understand that it's snowing outside, as it was 24 degrees the other day. It's quite unusual, I have to say. But I'm very glad to welcome you here. My name is Svetlomira Stoyanova. For those of you who don't know me, please do come after this session so we can meet. For everyone else, good day. It's a pleasure to see you here today. I'm the president of the NGO-UNESCO Liaison Committee and the chairperson of the International Conference of NGOs, elected in December last year. And today, what we will be doing, and I find very crucial for the work and the continuity of the work, is to see how was the committee been developing for the last periods. So today, here with us, we have the former presidents of the Liaison Committee, Mr. Davide Grosso, and Mr. Nick Newland, who is the current Vice President of our Liaison Committee. And today, here with you, we will tell you how the committee's work was developing, what kind of goals were we reaching out to make sure that the voices of all the currently 435 NGOs in official partnership with UNESCO are well heard. I just want to make sure that everybody in the room feels comfortable with English as a working language of today's session. And maybe just to make sure how many NGO representatives we have today, could you maybe with a raise of hand? Wonderful. Do we have national commissions in the room? Wonderful to see you too. Okay, well, thank you very much. After our short intervention, we will of course give you the floor if you have any questions or comments. But we will first start with the 2020-2022 mandate that took place under the presidency of Mr. Davide Grosso, and I will shortly give him the mic to present to us what were the main strategies developed during this 2 years mandate. Just to shortly tell you that every liaison committee has a 2 years mandate that will run, and just because we will have another session on focus NGOs right after this panel, we will have presentations from the different NGOs, and I will be very happy if you could stay for that as well. So with this, I give the floor to Mr. Davide Grosso.
Thank you, Svetlomira. Hello, welcome everyone. I know that this is probably the coldest room of the place. I just arrived this morning. There is another more, okay. Anyway, I'm just slowly waking up, so I haven't really prepared points, but I guess here the idea of today's session is to tell you a little bit more where do we come from. As Svetlomira just said, the Liaison Committee has a 2 years mandate, and as you could see in the first slide, I was elected president of the NGO-UNESCO Liaison Committee in December 2020. I don't know if you can remember what was December 2020. It was kind of a very, do you?
We don't want to remind.
Exactly. Well, that was for me kind of the same, you know. One thing that maybe just also to explain better, that we are elected from the NGOs that are in official partnership of UNESCO, so we are part of this 430 plus NGO. So yeah, I was elected and I found myself to kind of understand this space, which I knew actually before because of my NGO, the NGO I worked for. But we were, as the world was in a moment of transition. So the first thing that we tried to do was to kind of revise the way we were working internally. And we tried to tackle a few things about how the NGOs, the liaison committee works, what were the more, the part that were, you know, kind of challenging. We are, by the way, all volunteers. And this has always been like that. So it's like, thanks to the work and the passion that we put in our NGOs, that we involve ourselves in this kind of space. So I think one of the biggest challenge of this mandate was about revising the way that we were working internally, So we did a lot of thinking with the members of the committee. We did a few things. For example, we built a new website, also thanks to Nick and other people in the committee. We started finding a new way how to work. And then externally, we find some new ways on how to engage and how to strengthen partnership with UNESCO in a more meaningful way. Because the point here is how NGOs in official partnership with UNESCO support UNESCO work. So it's not about my NGOs working music. So it's not about putting music at the center of the table, but it's how my NGOs and all the beautiful diversity of NGOs contributes to the work of UNESCO. So this was and still is a work in progress of, talking with ADGs, talking with the Director General, talking with the sector, because one of the most important things is how we know each other and how we are aware of what is going on here and there. So how to remove these clusters. One more thing that I kind of initiated or reinitiated was two things. One was the regional and the importance of diversity. Svetlomira mentioned 400 plus NGOs. Of course, you can guess which is the continent that has most of NGOs. This is, of course, Europe, and this is, of course, for historical reasons that we are not going to debate right now. The point for me is also working for an international organization was how do we ensure that this network is really international, and how, like the diversity that I'm happy to see in this room, is reflected. So we started to do regional meetings in cooperation with UNESCO regional offices for all regions, to try to, on the one hand, talk more with the field offices, because sometimes there's also lack of understanding how the machine works, what the NGO Liaison Committee does. So to create more links for NGOs that are on the ground and are from underrepresented regions, to let them understand what is this space, how they can contribute, what they can take, but most important, what they can give. Because for those of you working for civil society organization, NGOs or networks, you probably understand that the strength of a network is active participation of the members. If you don't have this, or if you let members from one given region to be there forever, this is not diversity. So we really tried. Of course, I'm saying, where do we start? That was one thing that I really put a lot of emphasis in my mandate. And the other one was youth involvement. Because I come from an NGO where, when I arrived, I was an intern. So I was the youngest person. And actually, one of my first assignment was to be the one going to NGO Liaison Committee meetings. And I realized that we were talking about youth, but we were never giving young people the floor or just listening to them. So we tried with the entire team of the Liaison Committee at that time to create some more space for young people to be present. And here we have a couple of screenshots, because it happened that we had to, we found ourselves to kind of thinking about what do we do for the 75th anniversary of UNESCO. And we thought, well, let's ask young representatives for NGOs, what do they want? What do they see for this space? And actually, they came out, they had a lot of meetings, they had done online meetings, but the most important thing is that they write a position paper. I hope that a few NGOs here remember that, because probably some of young representative of your NGO was part of it. They wrote this position paper about how UNESCO and how the NGO UNESCO Liaison Committee and this network of NGOs would be more inclusive towards young people. I would stop here for now, and maybe if you need more, I can continue, but that's just to give you an idea where do we come from.
Thank you so much, Davide. So as Davide mentioned, at the end of 2020 was quite a difficult time, and I think that putting in the context of the approach towards the youth representatives and the fact that their voices were put in a paper in which we can all reflect on, it is quite crucial, because I do see, and I have to acknowledge the fact that in the room we have a new member of our NGOs in official partnership, Rehabilitation International. Thank you for joining us today. And I also see NGOs that are being with us for quite a while. So for us, it's important to go back in time to see what has happened, how we build the foundation, and what are the possible paths. With this, I will give the floor to Mr. Nick Newland, the current Vice President of the Liaison Committee and the President of the Committee before this mandate. Nick?
Thank you very much. Morning. I think there's some really interesting points that I want to pick up on just from what Davide and Svetlomira have already said. And one of the other things is looking in the room. It's great to have new NGOs who have just joined the network. And indeed, we have committee members in the current committee who only joined the network in the last 3 years. So there is a pathway. But also we have representatives from NGOs who are not in official partnership, but are with delegations on their accreditation for this conference. So it's great to see new friends in the room and to welcome them. I think the point on youth engagement is quite interesting, because for me as a 35-year-old to discover that the UN considered me youth was quite shocking, because I did not feel so young. I had been working professionally as an advocacy director for an international NGO already for 7 years, and I had been elected to the Liaison Committee and these things. But those voices, Davide was the youngest president ever elected when he was elected. And then I was the youngest president ever elected when I was elected. And then Svetlomira was the youngest president ever elected when she was elected. So I think next time we have an 8-year-old, and we'll have to escort them to the bar afterwards. But also, interestingly, when we look at that diversity, it's a journey, because when we look at the number of NGOs in official partnership and we look at the regional representation, this is not a fast race we are winning. Davide was the first non-French president elected. I was the first non-Parisian elected. Svetlomira is the first from Eastern Europe, so outside of the North European, or North America, European region. This is not, for the white guy from the UK to be claiming to be the diversity choice is really significant. That we are on a pathway, but it's not going as fast as it needs to. And we were all delighted to see Svetlomira elected, but I think we all want to see other regions represented in the leadership of the Liaison Committee, because this is the only way, as much as we will do everything we can, it's the only way we're going to see those different voices. So one of the points that Davide didn't raise during his mandate was building a relationship really closely with the sectors, which is part of the mandate of the Liaison Committee, but taking that into our core activities. It was really important to rebuild after COVID the practical relationships with the sectors. And so one of the last things that was done in Davide's mandate was to hold an international forum on the Ocean Decade and indigenous languages. But out of that, because of a conversation held between the Secretariat from the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission and the Liaison Committee, in that meeting, we all say, we go to meetings and everyone talks, but what is the outcome? Well, for us, the outcome was a commitment during that forum to establish a task group of NGOs to work with the IOC to establish or to build an Ocean Decade manual for NGO engagement. And that was led by then my Vice President, Teresa Kennedy. And with 20 NGOs from all over the world focused on how civil society could engage in the Ocean Decade. And that was, you know, a great success, and I was really pleased to see that launch last December. Taking the youth group that had been loosely established around the UNESCO 75, we took that a step further. We developed formal terms of reference and invited all NGOs to start sending youth representatives. And I think by the time we got, you know, we had a forum on AI and youth, but also by the time that we got to the International Conference last December, and we saw more than 50 youth representatives at that International Conference for the first time, and having their own separate parallel sessions where they were then able to engage with each other, but also with the main committee or the main body of the conference as equal participants, not just you are the voice of youth, well done, congratulations, but actually as participants, and put real feedback into the collective contributions to the 43C5 that was, that was built during the conference. Was a new and exciting opportunity. I'm not sure if anyone has ever called the 43C5 exciting, but it was a new and exciting opportunity to have that input into the future documents that will govern the next 2 years of UNESCO's activities, you know, or the next 4 years. Also building on, prior to COVID, the Liaison Committee had met in person in Paris, because that was the reality of the committee. You know, that's where the representatives were based, it's where the members were. And so for the first time with COVID, the paradigm shifted and the meetings, of course, went online. My committee was the first committee elected where every region of UNESCO was represented. And they were represented by people in the regions. And so we exclusively had online meetings for the 2 years of my mandate. And what that led to was a lot more consultation using these technologies that were not new, but had not previously been used, to actually have significant and repeated online consultations in great partnership with the Secretariat and the Division of Partnerships at UNESCO. Working with the sectors, we had briefings on preparations for the Pact for the Future and the Summit for the Future. We had briefings on the 43C5 and the preparations for other things at UNESCO. We also, though, had a consultative process, which meant rather than everyone coming to the International Conference, the 200 or so people who can afford to get there and who have the time to be there, and then saying, these are our recommendations. We spent more than a year gathering input from NGOs all over the world in consultations, in webinars, in informal discussions, in questionnaires, and then in person, and sending the draft of a document to everyone in advance and saying, you have 2 months to give us your feedback in detailed content. Because as Svetlomira will often say, you know, we as NGOs are not just people who don't have anything better to do, we are experts in our field, and we are supposed to be in consultative status with UNESCO. So if we are not using our expertise, it is a waste of time. So I'm not going to tell you that I know everything about ancient vehicles or small and medium enterprises or rehabilitation or whatever our specialisms are. I work in rural women and gender equality. I know a lot about that. So when we're presenting a set of recommendations to the Director General of UNESCO on what civil society thinks we need to do forwards, we need to hear every single voice from our network, but you can't do that in a meeting. You need a document in front of you, and then you need to send us bullet points based on position papers, which are based on policy papers. But it's not the committee's job as volunteers to synthesize your 400-page policy documents, but having the opportunity to take that time and put these into documents means that actually those contributions are valid. And it was very interesting, sat at a lunch that Davide and I were at with the now president of the General Conference, where we were discussing these things, and I said, this is the process we've gone through. Now these recommendations normally just go to the Director General, and they hopefully go through a process where they are absorbed. But to then have 3 ambassadors sat at the table saying, can you send me the recommendations too? I'd like to read them. I'd like to discuss them with my capital. That actually means we're having a wider impact and people are really hearing from us. I've probably given up on, we could probably flick over to the next slide. Thank you, Nazreen, sorry. One of the big challenges for the committee is that we are governed by a set of directives approved by member states and UNESCO as a whole, which are, by their very definition, very specific, and at the same time were very specific to the time they were approved. Now, there are 1,000 good reasons not to revisit those and try and renegotiate those, and we won't go into that today. However, one of the things the Liaison Committee is mandated to do by those directives is hold 4 international forums of NGOs. If you go back 10 years, they were regularly funded by member states or national commissions in great partnership. That doesn't happen anymore. COVID was a brilliant excuse to not fund civil society partnership, because you can do everything online. You don't need to meet people and talk to people in a room and be heard. And so one of the key focuses for me and my mandate was to deliver the 4 forums, but also to show how impossible that actually is. Because it is not a currently achievable reality, and we can spend all of our energy on having an event, but if the event doesn't have an outcome, it's a waste of time. So we did focus on delivering 4 forums. The first was on artificial intelligence and youth, and it was naturally held online, and it focused on harnessing the youth working group to have a tangible result, because working with UNESCO's recommendation on ethical use of AI, maybe a straw poll in the room. Anyone feel that the global governance or internal governance of AI companies and those mainly focusing their funding on AI, anyone feeling that's particularly ethical at the moment? No? No, me neither. The second was on transforming mentalities and was working with SHS at headquarters. And one of the focuses when we looked at the previous event, looking at the diversity, was to really focus on having representation from as many member states as possible, representation from making sure our panels were mixed and balanced, but not in a token way, making sure that we had the appropriate people in those panels speaking with their expertise. The 17th was actually led by Davide, with a huge amount of work that had gone in during his mandate on, I'm glad you remember, we were there in Abidjan, in Côte d'Ivoire, and this was on advocacy around culture as a goal for whatever came after the SDGs, which obviously has sort of turned into the Pact for the Future, sort of, kind of, maybe. And of course, the advocacy around that has been successful. There are specific intentions towards that. And the final forum, for me, was the really significant one, because I had spent 2 years as president, 2 years on the committee before that, 4 years engaging with the committee before that, and hearing everywhere at UNESCO about Priority Africa. But what I had not seen was how that was actually being delivered at the grassroots level and engagement. So we organised a forum on African leadership, experience and expertise in the new UN Decade for Sustainable Science, which had not yet been launched. So we did it with the Decade team. Every speaker at the forum, except for 3 members of the Liaison Committee, was from Africa. Every participant was, every speaker was, let's say, from Africa and working in Africa on this subject. It had a much wider audience, but it was really crucial that it was the people of Africa speaking about African leadership experience and expertise, rather than me as a European talking about it, or someone else saying, oh, we must hear the voice of Africa. It's like, well, maybe if we all shut up, then we can hear the voice of Africa. And that, for me, was a really interesting conference, because what came out of it was 15 or 16 NGOs contacting me to say, thank you for organising it, but because it was organised, we are now connected with the National Commission in our country, or we are now connected with the National Science Organisation in our country, because they have seen that we have expertise that they didn't know about. So it was doing our job, which is connecting our communities with our civil society mechanisms, and making sure that UNESCO was joining the dots. And so I was really grateful that, again, building on the work with national commissions, that we had the Ugandan, the Kenyan, the South African, and the Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, and Ugandan national commissions co-hosting that event with us. Not just putting money in, but actually contributing and making sure that national level experts were participating on panels, but not having a government panel and an NGO panel and a something else panel, but having shared panels where everyone was genuinely engaging with each other. And I think for me that will be, I mean, I think the forum took place 2 weeks before the end of my mandate, and it very nearly killed me, but it was delivered, and we delivered the 4 forums that we were supposed to. But the fact that we had to do it 2 weeks before the end and with no money is really indicative of having to be realistic as we go forwards about the resourcing of civil society. You know, we all as NGOs spend far too much time working as volunteers, even within our own organizations. And whilst we would never expect someone like UNESCO to fund NGOs directly, we have to see that when we are asked to provide expertise and we are asked to provide leadership, that that is met with the appropriate resourcing and support. I think that's probably enough from me. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Nick. Before I take the floor, I'll shortly give the mic to Davide.
Sorry, I had to, you know, sometimes you forget the most important things, you know, like you know, you forget about, you know, water or breathing, or I mean, you forget about mentioning this. I said that we were kind of restarting in a new way, and for those of you also that are maybe less familiar on how this thing works, I think it's very important to mention that also UNESCO sometimes has to also adapt to the results of the elections and to work with this diversity of people that are all volunteers. And coming back once again to where we come from is, because I have them in front of me, Julian Belot, Director for Partnership, who actually arrived, I don't remember exactly if while I was still president or okay. So it was a transition also and on that way, and Sabina Colombo, Chief for Civil Society Partnership, that was, and maybe you can confirm or not, it was also a way to engage or to work or to find new ways on how to build this partnership. And how I remember, Julian, that what was your main point, the first meeting we had when we were also learning from your side was, what's the point? Why this thing is relevant and how we keep this space relevant. And this is also, you know, a work in progress, and I think that now I also serve you how we can, we arrived as of today, but I think that was really important to mention, because this is the partnership where everything starts.
Thank you, Davide, and this is very crucial. Thank you, Nick, for sharing. I will just give you a very short background of mine. I have economic education, but my profession is a theater critic. I come from the field of arts, and for me it's always very crucial when you do something, you ask, why? Why do I do it? Why? And I would like to ask you, and please don't reply to me, if you have the urge to do so, come to me afterwards and tell me, why are you here today? I would really like to know. With this, I will start catching up from what Nick said for the last forum that was organized just before the International Conference last year in December. I was part of this steering committee, and for me, it was a journey into understanding the mechanisms on how it functions. Like, imagine in theater, I imagine all of you have been to the theater, yes? Yes, yes, okay, wonderful. So in the theater, you have these rules on stage that as audience you follow. And if you understand, you can deep dive into what you're looking at. In my experience, it's the same with UNESCO, I have to say. So for me to understand, I think you can all agree with me here, for me to quite better understand why does this committee exist, how does it function, in order for me to engage better, it was quite crucial to understand. And joining the steering committee to organizing this forum, the 17th International Forum of NGOs, it was quite crucial for me as an expert, and I always underline this, I am surrounded by you and you are experts in your field, and I respect each and every one of you for the work that you do, and that's why I'm here, because I would like to learn from you. You will see it in our program of work. I do believe that we can learn from each other regardless of what field we come from. So when I took over, in my childhood, I come from Bulgaria. I would like to remind you again that we have this culture where we learn from our parents and grandparents, and for us this is crucial. I believe that it is quite important to acknowledge the culture of each and every one of you so that we can better understand your needs, so that we can speak the same language per se. And for me, it was quite crucial to understand what was done before I show up, before I appear from thin air, and start to engage with each and every one of you. This is a difficult process, I have to say. It's 435 of you. And for me, it was a couple of main points that just stood in my mind. One of them was let's call it a regional mapping. Because in different regions, you do have a different necessity and way of expressing yourself and different needs. So for me, the Latin American and Caribbean region was a quite crucial topic. As you know, this is the most underrepresented region at UNESCO. And for us, it's quite crucial, and I have to say I'm very glad that Sabina and Juliana are here today because of the work of the Secretariat that's being done on regional mapping, and it will be soon presented. We will be very much involved in order to see what are the outcomes of this regional mapping in Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa. The second thing, as it was mentioned, I am at this current moment, maybe not in the future, we'll see about that, the youngest chairperson of the International Conference of NGOs. I joined the NGO world 15 years ago as a volunteer most of the time, and I imagine for most of you it's quite similar depending of the background. And for me to understand better how the NGOs function, I started working in the Ministry of Culture in my country. This experience gave me the opportunity to understand the administrative work and the way that the mechanism is functioning, but on another side. Because sometimes you do see the struggles and the issues and you don't seem to understand why. Why do we have these struggles? And you tend to blame without looking into what is causing that. And with this, I come to another crucial topic that was mentioned, and I have to say I'm very glad I see representatives from national commissions here with us today. The connection between the non-governmental organization and the national commissions. Can I ask you, if you feel comfortable with that, with the raise of hands, how many of you are connected with national commission, either in your country or in another one? That is a good percentage. I'm very pleased to see that. Wonderful. Well, for those of you who are not, I myself am curious to know, and I have to say I'm very happy that we're sharing the space with the national commissions in order to have the conversation. Why? What is the obstacle on the way that this process could not happen in order for us to have the partnership that we could have. And last but not least, as you know, just before the General Conference here, the Youth Forum, the 14th Youth Forum took place, out of which there were recommendations that were presented the previous days. And we had a representative from the Liaison Committee who attended this forum. I would like to tell you, and I use every opportunity I can to announce that, because as you heard, this willingness to actually have the youth voices heard, not just to tick a box and say, yes, we have youth representatives, and that's obviously yes. And NGOs are a great force and dynamics that is attracting young people to join. My question usually is, how do you keep them? Why do they stay? But in any case, what we did was to develop this youth working group. And currently, we have 80 members of the group representing NGOs from all around the world. And I would just like to say that we do have a youth representative with us today. And for me, it was quite crucial to know that they have the opportunity to mention what is it important for them to be mentioned during the youth forum, to see if it could be included in the recommendations. And I'm very glad to say to all of you today that the NGOs in official partnership with UNESCO are part of the recommendation that is divided into regional ones, national ones, international ones. And this is very crucial because, as Nick said, when you have it written in an official document, you can refer to it. We can have a countless number of conversations, but when we do have this official document that we can refer to, then the situation of the conversation we're having is slightly different, isn't it? Because I do want to acknowledge the fact that today, it's not just NGOs talking about how can we collaborate better in the future. We have the Secretariat with us, we have national commissions, we had ambassadors yesterday coming to the session that we had, and to all of you who attended, you know that the room was full and it was queuing outside. And for me, this is a sign. This is a sign that it actually matters, because your expertise matters. And this is something that I always refer to. I went to Mondia Cult, this event that took place, and I see familiar faces, it's lovely to see you. This event, this meeting of the representatives from Ministry of Cultures took place. I have to say I was quite impressed to hear from a Minister of Culture who said, for us to build a strategy, a national strategy for culture, we didn't have any other option but consulting with all the NGOs. I don't know how long this process took. I don't know how fruitful that was. But the fact that you say that in this space, it matters. And I say it to you now. For me, we are colleagues, and I will stop very soon because I would like to give you the floor, because I know we have very short time, and I would like to make sure that you have the chance to tell me what is it, your comments or your views. I have to stand up, I cannot sit for very long, I'm sorry. You will, whenever we see each other every time, you will start seeing that it's not possible for me. But before I do that, I would just like to tell you that building on the foundations, we have engaged with Priority Africa. And in the following days, you can see our program, by the way, that is over there on the left side of this space. You can see that in the following days, we will have a meeting with the Director of Division Priority Africa, and we will talk about our future collaboration, our strategic collaboration that will start next year. And I hope, I really do hope, that the committee members with our next mandate will continue this, I hope, fruitful collaboration dedicated to culture of peace. With this, I would like to tell you that, as Nick said, we have to be very realistic. We cannot close our eyes and pretend we don't see the reality that we're living in. Financially, NGOs are struggling. We as well. It is not a secret to anyone. But what I think that we should do is to make sure that the work that we can do with you and for you in the next year and so would be fruitful, and it will actually build up these foundations, and will make sure that this collaboration that we have with our growing family of NGOs would be efficient. With this, I stop, and I would like to give the floor to the ones who would like to share a comment, a thought, before we start with our next session, Focus NGOs, where you will present the work that you do with the vision for next year. Yes.
Sorry, I don't want to take the floor and really hear also from the partners. But just to say first, as you said, my name is Julian. For those of you I haven't met, I'm the Director of Partnerships. Really happy to see you all here. Thank you for coming all the way to the Silk Road, to Samarkand, to be with us. Just want to make 3 points. First, I think I really like the analogy with the theater. UNESCO is a big theater, but it's really important, as Davide was saying, that we keep the meaning behind it. And sometimes, we're so taken by our procedures, our ways of working, our directives, and all of that, that we forget a little bit why we're here. So it's really important that we reconnect with that and that we make our work meaningful. The second point is that we're in a really complicated global context right now. There is a huge pushback on multilateralism. There is a huge pushback on the UN. There are direct and indirect attempts to weaken the work of the UN. There is a pushback on the values of open societies, of social justice, gender equality, and everything that UNESCO and the rest of the UN family stand for. And in this role, we really have to join forces, and we really need to think how we can enhance our collaboration and our advocacy to show the importance of this work, the importance of multilateralism. And the voices of civil society is extremely important as an ally. We need to be allies on that, because we can hopefully create spaces for you, but you can also give legitimacy to our work. So it's a win-win situation, and we need to think more and strategize more about how we're going to do that, because it's just the beginning. And my third point is just a little bit about our priorities. Of course, supporting the work of the NGO Liaison Committee, and they already said it all, so I won't repeat too much. But number one, diversification of the network. That means in terms of generation, we want to see, it's great to see all the progress that has been made on youth engagement. We want even more of it. We want also more of intergenerational exchanges and dialogues. So it's great, all the work that is already happening there. Thematic diversification. So here the thematic mapping, again, that we're doing with the committee is really important. We need to understand better what are the areas of UNESCO that are well covered, what are those where we're still lacking some of your expertise and knowledge and networks, and we need to bring those in. And then the second priority, and you also alluded to that, and there has been a lot of progress made in the last 5-6 years, is to bring greater synergies between our work and the work of UNESCO Secretariat, the work of the program sectors. And we've heard great examples, Mondial Cult, the Ocean Decade. I mean, there were lots of things that were being done already. But that's really about getting out of our little boxes and trying to, how can I say, make sure that there is a value add in terms of your participation in the work of the program, but also that the program also responds to your realities and to the issues that you're trying to achieve with your own priorities. So there is a lot of work done, but still a lot to go. Tomorrow at what time? At 2 o'clock we will present the NGO network, so we can give you a bit more of an overview of how it's looking like, these 435 NGOs, so we can talk more about that then. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. As I see the time, I would like to very shortly ask which one of you in the room will have presentation for our next session that is about to start in program in 1 minute. Just a hand. Very good. Do you all agree if instead of asking you informally so that now we can continue with the previous panel. We do that moving on to your presentation so that you could be actually on stage and sharing this experience. But I would like to ask you for something, if you don't mind, and I hope you don't. For me, it is always very crucial to respect the time of people. That's why I'm very urged to start on time. At 2 o'clock here, there will be a presentation of the Hungarian National Commission, which means that we have to be very precise with time. As you see with the raise of hand, there are several presentations. I would like to ask you, so that we're able to hear all of you, which is also our mission, to be very short. I will very shortly go over there, but my colleagues will give you a sign whenever you have one, not only him, yes, my colleagues will give you a sign whenever you have 1 minute left to your speech. As you know, tomorrow, some of you, me, including me, will go on stage and we will have our interventions. We will have 3 minutes. For the next 30 seconds, I want to tell you the following. Always, when I pitch my ideas in front of investors, I am very aware of their time and the information that I'm giving them. For me, this is a great exercise for all of you, for all of us, for tomorrow, to make sure that in very small amount of time, we can tell the most crucial information that we would like to stay in the minds of the people in front of us. And time? So, I will leave the microphone now. I will go there and I will tell you which comes after which. Would that work? Okay, we have 1 minute of rest and we continue. Thank you very much.